Single Dad saved the CEO's life. She offered him a job he couldn't refuse, or her heart rain fell over the lower district like silver lines in the dark sky. The tall towers of the upper city shined far above, bright and clean, but down below everything felt old and tired. Neon lights flickered. Steam rose from broken vents in the streets. Small delivery drones flew between buildings like metal insects. Arman walked home with slow steps. His work boots were wet, and his jacket smelled of oil and smoke. He had spent 12 hours fixing broken power lines at a cargo yard near the spaceport. The job paid little, but it was enough to keep food on the table. He stopped near a small shop and looked at the window. Inside, a toy starship rotated slowly in a glass case. It had bright wings and blue lights. His daughter Lila had pointed at it last week and said she wanted to fly one someday. Arman checked his pocket. Not enough credits. He turned away. He kept walking through narrow streets. He noticed how quiet it was. Usually the night markets were loud. Tonight many stalls were closed. The air felt strange, heavy. Far above, something bright moved across the clouds. At first he thought it was just another shuttle leaving orbit. Then the light began to shake. Arman stopped walking. The object in the sky moved in a strange way. Sparks fell from it. The sound reached him a second later. A deep roar, like thunder that would not stop. People stepped out of buildings and looked up. The shuttle tilted sharply. One of its engines exploded in a flash of orange light. Someone screamed. The shuttle fell fast toward the industrial zone near Arman's apartment block. It crashed behind old warehouses with a terrible sound that shook the ground. Windows shattered. A wave of heat rushed through the street. For a moment, everything was silent. Then alarms began to ring in the distance. People started running away from the crash site. Arman did not move. He watched smoke rise into the sky. His chest felt tight. He had seen ships fall before. Years ago, during the alien raid, he had watched the sky burn the same way. He closed his eyes for a second. He saw his wife's face in his memory. He heard the sound of weapons and screams. Then he opened his eyes again. This was not the past. This was now. Emergency services would take time to reach the lower district. The industrial zone had many empty buildings. Fires could spread fast. Arman began to walk toward the smoke. He told himself he only wanted to check if someone needed help. Nothing more. As he moved closer, he saw something that made him slow down. Several black armored vehicles stopped near the crash site. They had no city markings, no emergency lights. The doors opened, and masked men stepped out. They carried weapons. Arman stepped into a shadow between two buildings. These were not rescue teams. The men moved quickly toward the burning shuttle. They spread out, covering exits. One of them carried a heavy cutting tool. Arman's heart beat faster. He had worked as a combat engineer in the Interplanetary Defense Forces. He knew the way trained fighters moved. These men were professionals. He told himself to leave. This was not his fight. He had Lila waiting at home. But then he heard something. A faint sound came from the wreck. It was not the crackle of fire. It was a voice. Arman took a slow breath. He removed his jacket and wrapped it around his arm for protection. He picked up a metal pipe from the ground. He moved quietly along the side of a warehouse. Keeping low, the shuttle had crashed on its side. Flames licked at its broken wing. Smoke filled the air. Two masked men stood near the main hatch, trying to cut it open. Another man stood guard a few meters away. Arman watched their pattern. The guard turned his head every few seconds. His weapon pointed toward the street. Arman moved behind a stack of crates. When the guard stepped closer to the shuttle, Arman acted. He rushed forward and hit the man's helmet with the metal pipe. The guard fell without a sound. Armin caught him before he hit the ground. The other men were busy with the hatch. Sparks flew as they cut through metal. Armin dragged the unconscious guard behind the crates. He took the man's small pulse pistol and checked its charge. Half full. He moved again, closer this time. The hatch finally broke open. One masked man climbed inside. The other waited outside. Armin did not hesitate. He aimed carefully and fired at the second man's shoulder joint. The armor sparked. The man cried out and fell back. The man inside the shuttle shouted something. Armin ran forward and entered through the broken hatch. Inside, the shuttle was dark and full of smoke. Emergency lights flickered red. The masked man inside turned toward him and raised his weapon. Armin kicked the weapon away and punched the man hard in the chest. They struggled in the narrow space. Flames burned close to the control panels. The masked man tried to grab Armin's throat. Armin headbutted him and pushed him against a broken seat. The man lost balance and hit his head. Silence filled the shuttle. Armin listened carefully. The faint voice came again. He moved deeper inside. Near the cockpit, he found a woman trapped under fallen metal. Her suit was torn. Blood stained her sleeve. Her eyes were open. She looked at him with fear and surprise. "Please," she whispered. Armin knelt beside her. "Can you move your legs?" She tried and shook her head. The fire was spreading. Armin looked around. He found an emergency lever near the side wall. With effort, he pulled it. A section of the cabin lifted slightly. He slid his arms under the metal and lifted with all his strength. Pain shot through his shoulders. The woman pulled herself free. Armin grabbed her arm and helped her stand. She winced, but did not cry out. More voices came from outside. The other attackers were regrouping. "We need to move," Armin said. He supported her weight as they reached the rear service hatch. It was smaller, but not blocked. They slipped out into a narrow alley behind the warehouses. Gunfire echoed behind them. Armin led her toward a maintenance tunnel entrance hidden behind old containers. He had worked in this area for years. He knew the underground paths. He opened a rusted hatch and helped her climb down. They moved through dark tunnels lit by weak blue lights. The air smelled of dust and old water. The woman leaned against the wall to rest. "Who are you?" she asked softly. "Just someone who was nearby," Armin replied. She studied his face as if trying to remember something. "We have to keep moving," he said. Above them, heavy footsteps echoed. The attackers were searching. They walked for several minutes. Finally, they reached a hidden exit near Armin's apartment building. He checked the street carefully before stepping out. No black vehicles, only frightened neighbors watching smoke rise from the industrial zone. Armin guided the woman up the stairs to a small apartment. Inside, Lila was sitting at the table, drawing stars on paper. When she saw her father, she jumped up. "Baba, what happened?" "I saw the fire," Armin forced a calm smile. "It's okay. We have a guest." Lila looked at the injured woman with wide eyes. The woman tried to smile back. Armin helped her sit on the small couch. He cleaned her wound carefully and wrapped it with a medical kit he kept from his old days. She watched him work. "You were military," she said quietly. He paused for a second. "Long time ago." She nodded slowly. After a moment, she spoke again. "My name is Alara Vance." Armin froze. He knew that name. Everyone did. Alara Vance was the CEO of Nova Core Industries, the largest energy corporation on Earth and in orbit. Her face appeared on news screens almost every day. Lila gasped. "Are you the lady from the big towers?" Alara gave a small, tired laugh. "Yes, I think I am. Armand stepped back. If she was here, in his home, then the attack was not random. Someone wanted her. And if those men found out she survived, they would not stop. Outside, distant sirens filled the air. Out of dark, Elara looked at Armand with steady eyes now, no longer afraid. They will come looking, she said. Armand walked to the window and looked down at the street. Two dark shapes moved at the corner of the block. He pulled the curtain closed. Yes, he answered quietly. They will. Lila stood close to him, holding his hand. For the first time in years, Armand felt the old weight return to his shoulders, the feeling that danger had found him again. But this time, he was not alone. He looked at his daughter, then at the powerful woman sitting on his worn couch. He had only wanted to live a quiet life. Instead, the night had brought fire to his door. And somewhere in the city, men with masks were searching for them. The rain continued to fall outside, washing the smoke across the streets, but it could not wash away what had started. This was only the beginning. The next morning, the city was quiet, but the tension inside Armand's small apartment was thick. Lila sat at the kitchen table eating breakfast slowly, while Armand checked the streets from the window. He watched every shadow, every movement. Even with Elara recovering in the living room, he felt responsible for her safety. Elara's injuries were minor but required rest. She sat wrapped in a blanket, her eyes following Armand with curiosity and something more subtle. Her presence felt both commanding and fragile. For a person who controlled a corporation worth billions, she now depended on a single man in a worn jacket and his little apartment. Lila finally spoke, her voice soft but curious. Baba, will they come again? Armand crouched beside her. We don't know yet, but we will be ready. Elara's voice interrupted them. Armand, I know who you are. You saved my life last night. Armand nodded, still tense. It was just instinct. You were in danger. Anyone would have acted. She shook her head. No, not everyone has your skills. I've been in situations like that many times. Most people freeze. You didn't. Armand did not answer immediately. He wanted to change the subject, but realized she was not someone he could ignore. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent. They studied him carefully. I need to know if I can trust you, she said. The people who attacked me will not stop. They have resources, information, and power. I need someone I can trust completely. Armand looked at her. He remembered the fire, the falling shuttle, the masked men. He remembered the fear in her eyes, and also the confidence. She was not just a civilian. She was someone who knew how to survive. I don't work for CEOs, he said quietly. I'm not asking you to work for me because of my position, she said. I'm asking you because you saved me. I want you to join me at Novacor Industries as my personal security advisor. You can help me protect the company and yourself. And there's more. A salary that can give your daughter a future you could never imagine. Armand's eyes narrowed. He thought of Lila, of the small life they had, and of everything he had lost before. Money was tempting, but he had learned long ago that danger came with every choice. I can't, he said firmly. I don't want that life anymore. Elara leaned forward, her voice softer. I understand, but danger doesn't care about your choices, Armand. It will come from me, and you will be part of it whether you like it or not. You already know that. Her words felt like a warning and a promise. Armand stayed silent. Suddenly, a faint noise came from outside. Something mechanical, like a drone. Armand's body tensed. He went to the window. A small dark object moved above the building, scanning the streets. They're already looking, he said. Elara rose slowly. wincing at a small pain in her side. "Then you see why I need you." Armand turned to her. He wanted to refuse, but the truth hit him hard. If he did not protect her, she might die, and if she died, the city, the company, and many others would pay a price. Lila's life could be affected too. He swallowed. "I'll do it," he said finally, "but not for money. I'm doing it to keep us alive." Elara nodded. Relief and gratitude showed in her eyes. "That is all I ask." The next hours were tense. Armand began checking the apartment thoroughly. He moved furniture, inspected ventilation shafts, and created a small network of escape routes he had used during his military days. Lila watched, learning without understanding all the details. By mid-afternoon, Armand made his decision. They had to move to a safer place. Novacor's orbital headquarters was the best option. It was far from the lower city, heavily guarded and technologically advanced. Elara could recover there, and Armand could plan their next moves. He called a discreet transport service and arranged for a shuttle under the guise of a corporate emergency. Elara followed silently, trusting him. Lila, curious and brave, held her father's hand the entire way. The ride to the orbital station was smooth. Lila pressed her face against the glass, watching Earth shrink below them. She asked questions about stars and planets, and Armand answered simply, keeping their minds on the wonder rather than the danger. When they arrived, the station felt like another world. White halls, glowing lights, floating displays, and robots gliding along the corridors. It was safe but strange, and Armand felt out of place. He was a man of streets and machines, not clean towers and robotic servants. Elara introduced him to some of the key people. Mira, a young scientist who worked on alien technology, and Victor, a calm administrator who managed the station's operations. Roland, the head of security, greeted Armand politely, but his eyes seemed calculating. Armand sensed tension and thought it wise to keep an eye on him. They settled in a small but comfortable suite. Lila explored cautiously, fascinated by the floating objects and automated systems. Mira took a liking to her immediately, showing her harmless robots and telling stories about other planets Novacor had explored. Armand began reviewing the shuttle crash data. The logs revealed a shocking truth. The shuttle's route had been changed minutes before the attack by someone inside the system. This was not a random act. Someone knew where Elara would be and planned the ambush carefully. Elara watched him work silently. She felt a growing respect for the man who had saved her life and was now helping her uncover the truth. He had skills, intuition, and courage that few people possessed. Late that evening, as Earth glowed below them, alarms suddenly rang across the station. A reactor warning flashed red. The system had detected an anomaly, a small sabotage attempt. Armand's old instincts kicked in. He ran to the reactor chamber and found a small device attached to the energy conduits. It had been planted to overload the reactor. Using his engineering knowledge, he removed the device and stabilized the system. Elara and Lila watched in awe. She realized that Armand was more than just a rescuer. He was a protector, someone who could face danger head-on. When the situation calmed, Elara approached him. "You see why I need you," she said softly. Armand looked at her, tired and tense. "I see why you can't do this alone." Elara smiled faintly. "And I see why I can trust you." They shared a quiet moment, understanding that the night was only the beginning. Outside, unknown forces were moving, waiting, watching. Someone inside the station might also be involved, sending secret messages to enemies. The danger was not gone, only delayed. Armand realized that accepting Elara's offer meant stepping back into a world he had tried to leave behind. But this time, he had a clear reason: to protect his daughter. to protect a life he had saved, and maybe to find a purpose again. Lila, tired from the excitement, curled up on a small couch with Mira's robot toy. She whispered to Arman, "Baba, will they be safe now?" He kissed her hair gently. "For tonight, yes. Tomorrow we prepare." Elara watched the small scene quietly. She had faced countless crises in her life, but seeing a father protect his child with such determination stirred something she could not explain. She realized that Arman had given more than his strength. He had given trust, courage, and heart. The night fell over the station, quiet and full of stars. Arman stood at the viewport, looking at Earth below. He thought of the masked men, the crash, the danger that had followed them, and he thought of the new life he had chosen, a life where his skills, his instincts, and his heart would be tested again and again. Somewhere in the vast reaches of space, unknown enemies were moving, watching, and planning. The story was far from over, but Arman knew that as long as he had Lila by his side and Elara to trust, he could face whatever came next. The night ended with the quiet hum of the station and the soft breathing of his daughter. Arman knew that he had made a choice he could not undo, a choice that would change his life forever. And deep inside, he also felt the first hint of hope, a feeling he had thought lost long ago. Life aboard the Novacore orbital station felt both strange and fascinating to Arman. The corridors were wide, clean, and lit by soft blue lights. Robots moved silently along the walls, carrying packages and checking systems. Screens floated in the air, displaying real-time data from Earth and nearby space. Everything was advanced, precise, and controlled. But to Arman, it felt unfamiliar. He was used to streets filled with chaos, tools covered in grime, and unpredictability. Here, everything seemed smooth and calculated. Lila bounced along the hallways, fascinated by the floating displays. She laughed as she reached for them and found them moving just out of her grasp. Mira, the scientist who had taken a liking to her, walked beside her, showing how some screens could be interacted with safely. Arman watched, keeping one eye on his daughter and another on the station's surveillance systems. He had already begun noticing small inconsistencies in the logs, things that didn't quite match up, because Elara recovered slowly in her suite. She still had a small wound on her side from the crash, but she was strong. She spent most of the morning reviewing reports and discussing projects with her team, yet she found herself glancing toward Arman frequently, assessing his movements, his attentiveness, his reactions to the station and its personnel. He was not just a man of muscle. He was observant, quick, and careful. Arman had begun reviewing the shuttle crash data thoroughly. The logs were troubling. The route had been altered just minutes before departure by someone with top-level clearance. That meant that the attack was orchestrated by someone who knew the shuttle's schedule intimately, someone inside Novacore, or with direct access, had set up the ambush. Arman's mind raced through possibilities. Could it be someone on the station now, pretending to be loyal? His instincts told him yes. Danger was never far, and this time, it had a face among them. He observed Roland, the head of security, closely. The man was efficient, polite, and always present. Yet there was something calculated in his gaze, a precision that did not come from casual concern. Arman did not trust him entirely, though he decided to wait and watch, gathering more evidence before making a move. Meanwhile, Mira, noticing Lila's curiosity, decided to show her more of the station. They floated through clean corridors and visited labs with devices Arman had never seen. Small robots played around them, performing harmless experiments. Lila's laughter echoed, a rare sound that made Arman relax slightly. It reminded him of what he was protecting, why he had taken this role despite the dangers. He was no longer just a survivor. He had a purpose. During a quiet moment, Elara approached Arman while he studied the logs. "You notice the irregularities," she said, almost as if reading his mind. Arman nodded. "Yes." The shuttle was redirected, and someone inside has been sending messages to an unknown contact. They are planning something bigger. Elara frowned. "You think it's someone on this station?" "It's possible," Arman said carefully. "Or they have someone here who will act when the time comes. Either way, we cannot trust appearances." Elara considered his words. She had managed crises before, but seeing someone else analyze threats with such clear thought was reassuring. "Then we prepare," she said. "We fortify, we watch, and we do not let anyone suspect that we know." The next few days passed with careful observation. Arman tested systems, reinforced weak points, and studied station security protocols. He found small signs of tampering in storage areas and the reactor. Nothing critical yet, but enough to indicate someone was testing defenses, probing for weaknesses. It confirmed his earlier suspicions. The threat was not random. It was calculated and ongoing. One evening, as Arman inspected a maintenance corridor, he noticed a faint blinking light behind a panel. His curiosity and training told him to investigate. Pulling the panel open, he found a small transmitter hidden inside the wall. It was sending encrypted signals to an unknown location outside the station. Whoever had planted it had tried to be subtle, but Arman's military experience made him precise. He disconnected it and hid it carefully for later analysis. Elara watched his discovery. "They are closer than I thought," she said softly. "Yes," Arman agreed, "and we need to be ready for what comes next." Despite the tension, Arman tried to maintain some normalcy. But Lila asked questions about stars, planets, and how the station stayed in orbit. He answered simply, teaching her about gravity, engines, and distant worlds. Lila's excitement and curiosity gave him hope, a reminder that his daughter's life was worth every risk. Late one night, the station's alarm suddenly rang. Arman sprinted toward the reactor, where a small anomaly had triggered. A minor sabotage attempt was underway, though nothing had yet caused serious damage. Using his technical skills, he removed a device planted to disrupt the reactor's flow. Sparks flew, but he managed to prevent a disaster. Elara arrived soon after, watching him with a mix of admiration and concern. She realized that Arman's presence on the station was more than just protective. He had the knowledge and courage to act when the unthinkable happened. After stabilizing the reactor, Arman and Elara had a quiet moment in the observation lounge. Earth's glowing blue and green continents lay beneath them. Stars stretched endlessly beyond. Arman leaned against the window, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing on him. "This is only the beginning," he said quietly. Elara nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "Yes. And now we have to plan for every possibility." Arman looked at her, tired yet focused. He realized she had placed trust in him, a trust he had earned in the fire and smoke of the streets, in the wreckage of a falling shuttle, and he knew he could not let her down. Outside, in the shadows beyond the station's observation sensors, unknown forces were beginning to move. Drones and small reconnaissance ships were scanning orbital patterns. Someone had knowledge of Elara's location and intentions. The logs Arman had found indicated more than just curiosity. It suggested a plan that could threaten the entire station, its inhabitants, and the discovery Novacore had been working on. Arman returned to his quarters briefly, checking his equipment and preparing contingency plans. Every tool, every small device, was placed carefully. He imagined the paths an intruder might take, the timing of attacks, and possible weak points. He moved as though already inside a battle he had to fight, anticipating the enemy's moves before they even began. Lila had gone to sleep, exhausted from the excitement of the station and the day's events. Armin watched her quietly, thinking about what he had promised her: safety, a future, and a life that was better than the one they had below. He knew danger would come, but he was ready to meet it. Elara entered quietly, sitting beside him. "You think like a soldier," she said, almost as an observation rather than a question. "I was," Armin said simply. "But now, it's not about fighting wars. It's about protecting lives." Elara studied him for a moment. Then she nodded. "Then we fight, in our own way." They shared a silent understanding, the bond between a rescuer and the one he saved deepening. Outside the station, the stars twinkled like distant eyes watching. Somewhere far away, messages were being sent, plans being made. The threat was not gone. It was only hidden for now, waiting for the right moment. Armin returned to the observation window. He watched Earth below, the city lights shimmering. He thought about the hidden transmitter, the sabotage, and the crew whose loyalty he was still unsure of. Every detail mattered, and he would notice them all. In his mind, he ran scenarios, calculated risks, and imagined every possible outcome. Elara remained at his side, quiet but aware. She realized that having Armin on the station meant more than security. It meant intelligence, experience, and judgment that even her trained executives could not match. He was a man who saw beyond appearances, who understood danger before it struck. The night passed slowly, the quiet hum of the station a constant reminder that life continued even under threat. Armin remained vigilant, not out of fear, but out of duty. He had chosen this path, and there was no turning back. By dawn, Armin had mapped escape routes, identified points of vulnerability, and placed small safeguards around the station. He reported his findings to Elara, who listened attentively. Her respect for him grew, not just as the man who saved her life, but as a strategist, protector, and father. The reality of living in space, of constant surveillance, and of hidden enemies had become their new life. The day began with routine operations, but Armin knew the calm was temporary. The masked men, the altered shuttle route, the hidden transmitter, they were pieces of a larger puzzle that was just beginning to take shape. And he would face it all, using every skill he had learned, every instinct honed, to protect the people he now cared for, the station, and the secrets it held. As Lila played with her new floating toy robots under Mira's watchful eye, Armin stood at the viewport again. He saw the stars stretching endlessly, and he felt a sense of readiness, a resolve that had returned to him. Danger was approaching, but he would be ready. The story of survival, trust, and courage was only growing, and the challenges ahead would test him more than ever. Yet, for the first time in years, he felt a sense of control. He was no longer just surviving. He was preparing to protect, to fight, and to ensure that those he loved could live safely in a universe that was vast, beautiful, and dangerous. Armin had been watching the station closely for days, observing routines, checking systems, and analyzing personnel behavior. He had already found evidence of tampering and sabotage, but he was certain the real threat was closer than anyone suspected. The station's clean halls, silent robots, and floating lights seemed almost peaceful, but Armin knew that danger often hid behind calm appearances. One afternoon, while reviewing security logs, Armin discovered something alarming. Victor, the calm administrator, had been accessing restricted areas of the station without proper authorization. The timestamps matched some of the anomalies Armin had found, including minor power surges and tampered devices. Victor had always seemed reliable and composed, but the logs suggested otherwise. Armin decided to watch more closely before acting. Meanwhile, Roland, the head of security, noticed Armin's increased attention and began asking questions. His calm voice and polite tone seemed innocent, But Armand felt a subtle challenge behind them. Roland's eyes followed Armand in corridors, noting every movement. Armand could not tell if Roland suspected him or if he was simply testing his awareness. Lila, oblivious to the growing tension, wandered the station with Mira. They explored labs, watched robots perform small tasks, and laughed together. Armand felt a small relief seeing his daughter enjoying herself. It reminded him why he had taken this job, why he had left the quiet life he had tried to live. But he could not let his guard down for a second. Then disaster struck. Victor was found dead in his office. The alarms blared and the station's security system went into lockdown. Evidence was quickly manufactured to suggest Armand had accessed Victor's office at the time of the incident. A series of fabricated security camera recordings made it look as though Armand had tampered with sensitive data, even though he had done no such thing. Roland confronted him, his calm demeanor now edged with authority. "You need to come with us, Armand. The board wants answers." Armand's heart sank. He had suspected threats from outside and inside the station, but now it seemed that someone was actively trying to frame him. He realized that the real enemy had knowledge of both the station and his movements. If he could not prove his innocence, he would not only be imprisoned but removed from the fight to protect Alara and Lila. Alara faced pressure from the board of directors to suspend Armand immediately. The executives argued that a civilian being able to access secure areas during a crisis was dangerous and unacceptable. Alara struggled with the decision. She knew Armand's skills, his judgment, and his loyalty. Yet, the board demanded results quickly, and the evidence seemed convincing. She could not ignore the pressure entirely. "I know he is not guilty," Alara whispered to herself, frustration tightening her jaw. She decided to act secretly, using her own access to review the logs independently. While the board and security personnel debated, she began to piece together the truth. Meanwhile, Lila, playing near a maintenance corridor, noticed something unusual. She saw a man placing a small device behind a panel. Curious and brave, she quietly followed him and watched as he left. She ran to Armand and whispered what she had seen. "Baba, I think someone is hiding something," she said. Armand listened carefully, his mind racing. He knew that the device Lila had seen could be another transmitter or a tool for sabotage. He thanked her quietly, keeping her calm, and began to plan his next move. The safety of the station, Alara and Lila, depended on swift and precise action. Using Lila's tip, Armand sneaked to the maintenance area and located the hidden device. It was a small transmitter similar to the one he had found days earlier, sending data from Novacor's alien energy research to an unknown location off-world. Whoever had planted it had not expected him to find it. He removed it and hid it carefully. The evidence against him remained strong, but now Armand had a clue to follow. The messages indicated that someone was collaborating with a rival off-world faction that wanted Novacor's technology. The scope of the conspiracy was wider than he had imagined. It was not just a threat to Alara or the station. It was a threat to humanity's access to the alien energy discoveries. Armand realized that Roland was not the only problem. The conspiracy involved more people, possibly including high-ranking officials who had inside knowledge. Every decision he made needed to be precise, every move calculated. One mistake could cost lives. Before he could act further, security personnel arrived to arrest him. Armand did not resist physically. Instead, he allowed them to escort him to the holding area. He knew he had to bide his time, to wait for the right moment to prove his innocence. His mind worked constantly, analyzing escape routes, weaknesses in the station's protocol, and potential allies. Alara, meanwhile, used her access to review the system logs in secret. She discovered fragments of hidden messages, small data packets that had been overlooked by automated monitoring systems. These fragments pointed directly to Roland's operations. It became clear that someone had orchestrated Victor's death to frame Armand and distract from the real conspiracy. Her confidence in Armand grew even stronger. Armand, held in the temporary detention area, kept a low profile. He observed the station guards, noting patterns in their patrols and communication. Even in confinement, he planned his next steps, knowing that proving his innocence was not just about clearing his name, but about stopping the larger threat. Lila spent time with Mira, unaware of the tension surrounding her father. Mira reassured her and taught her small things about the station's operation, giving Lila a sense of normalcy. Armand thought of these moments and drew strength from them. His daughter's safety and happiness became his motivation more than anything else. Later, Armand managed to communicate secretly with Mira, who believed in him despite the fabricated evidence. She provided him with the final pieces of the security logs and helped him understand the patterns. Together, they identified key points where the real traitor could be observed and eventually confronted. The danger was no longer hypothetical. The enemy had shown their ability to manipulate evidence, commit murder, and infiltrate the station. Armand's training, instinct, and careful observation became their only advantage. He knew that confrontation was inevitable, and preparation was the only way to survive and protect those he cared for. As the day ended, Armand sat quietly in his cell planning. Outside, the station continued its operations, unaware of the invisible threads of conspiracy weaving through its systems. Ilara worked diligently to uncover the truth, trusting Armand's judgment and abilities. Lila slept peacefully, oblivious to the growing storm around her father and the CEO she had come to admire. Armand understood that he was at a crossroads. The next moves would determine not only his fate, but also the fate of Novacore, its secrets, and the people aboard the station. Every observation, every choice, every calculated risk mattered. Failure was not an option. He looked at the viewport, where distant Earth shone softly beneath the stars. The city lights twinkled like tiny beacons. The universe outside seemed vast and uncaring, but within the station, unseen battles were about to begin. The story of trust, betrayal, and courage was reaching a turning point, and Armand was ready to face it with every skill he possessed. The enemy was hidden, the threat growing, but he had the advantage of preparation, experience, and determination. As night fell on the station, Armand silently promised himself that he would prove his innocence, uncover the traitor, and protect Ilara and Lila, no matter the cost. The coming days would test him in ways he had not experienced before, and the survival of those he loved depended on his ability to act decisively. In the shadows, the real enemy watched, but Armand was ready, and he would not falter. This was a battle of wits, skill, and courage, and he intended to win. Armand had been held for hours, observing the station through the security camera feeds he had secretly accessed with Mira's help. Every movement, every interaction, every small detail mattered. He had to find the real traitor and stop them before they could do more harm. The death of Victor and the hidden transmitters indicated a larger conspiracy than he had anticipated. He understood that this was not just a personal attack. It was an operation designed to destabilize Novacore and steal the alien energy technology the company had discovered on a distant moon. Mira had given him fragments of data she had salvaged. They were small, encrypted packets showing communication between Roland and an unidentified off-world group. Armand studied them carefully, noting the patterns and timestamps. The messages had been designed to hide in the system, but his experience allowed him to notice irregularities invisible to most. The pieces formed a picture. Roland was not acting alone. He had allies, both within the station and possibly beyond. Ilara worked tirelessly, analyzing logs, questioning personnel, and trying to maintain normal operations while keeping the board at bay. She knew suspending Arman would not solve anything, but she also had to appear compliant to avoid further suspicion. Every move she made had to balance corporate politics and survival. Arman finally found a way to escape temporary detention. Using a hidden maintenance hatch he had memorized from his first days on the station, he slipped past guards who assumed he was still confined. His movements were quiet, precise, and controlled. Every step was calculated to avoid detection. He made his way to the reactor area, suspecting that Roland might attempt another sabotage there. As he approached, he found signs that someone had tampered with the systems again. But this time, the devices were more advanced and more dangerous. Arman carefully disabled them, using his knowledge of engineering and security protocols. Sparks flew, alarms tried to sound, but he had anticipated everything. The reactor was safe for now, but he knew the enemy would try again. Meanwhile, Lila continued to explore the station with Mira. The young girl was learning quickly, her curiosity matched only by her bravery. She enjoyed floating in zero-gravity chambers and watching Mira's experiments. To Arman, these moments were a reminder of what he was fighting for. Protecting Lila's innocence and safety had become his highest priority. Ilara observed Arman's actions from the control room. She realized that his understanding of threats, both human and technological, was unmatched. While others relied on protocols and systems, Arman anticipated, adapted, and acted. She admired his courage, intelligence, and instinct. Arman knew the confrontation was coming. The encrypted messages, the sabotage, and the death of Victor all pointed to a single truth. Roland had been planning a major strike, likely targeting the energy core itself. The core was the most valuable asset of NovaCore, the culmination of years of research and discovery. In the wrong hands, it could change the balance of power in the galaxy. He prepared for the confrontation, assembling the evidence, analyzing every possible outcome, and mapping escape routes. He contacted Mira discreetly, and she provided him with additional support, access codes, and information on station security overrides. Together, they formed a small, effective team that could challenge the hidden enemy. When Arman finally confronted Roland, it was in the energy chamber, the heart of the station's power systems. Roland was surprised but quickly recovered, attempting to assert dominance through threats and intimidation. He revealed part of his motive. He believed that NovaCore should not control the alien energy. It was too powerful for one corporation. He planned to sell it to the highest bidder and reshape the political landscape across several systems. The confrontation quickly escalated. Sparks and alarms filled the chamber as devices malfunctioned, either due to prior sabotage or the struggle itself. Arman fought with a combination of skill, agility, and strategy, using the confined space to his advantage. He neutralized Roland without lethal force, understanding that killing him would not end the threat entirely. The confrontation was brutal but measured, a clash of skill, intelligence, and determination. During the fight, the energy core became unstable. Warning lights flashed, and the hum of the core grew louder, threatening to overload. Arman realized he had to act quickly. He instructed Roland to assist, knowing that the traitor's knowledge of the systems could help stabilize the situation. Despite the risk, Arman worked with him, recalibrating the core's containment field manually, entering areas with high radiation and electrical discharge. Sweat and sparks coated his clothes, but he remained focused. Ilara monitored the situation from the control room, directing personnel to evacuate non-essential areas and secure vital systems. She knew Arman's skills were critical to preventing catastrophe. Every decision, every command had to be precise. Finally, after intense moments, the core stabilized, the station's systems normalized, alarms silenced, and the immediate danger was over. Arman emerged from the chamber, exhausted but victorious. Roland was restrained and removed from his position. The threat within the station had been neutralized, at least for now. The aftermath was tense. Nova Corps executives reviewed the events, realizing the magnitude of what had occurred. Armand's actions had saved the station, the personnel, and the company's most valuable asset. Elara publicly commended him for his courage and skill. She understood that his role was more than that of a bodyguard or engineer. He was a strategist, protector, and vital asset. Leela, unaware of the full danger, ran to Armand and hugged him tightly. "You saved everyone, Baba," she said, eyes wide with admiration and relief. Armand held her close, feeling a mixture of pride and exhaustion. Protecting his daughter and the people he had come to care about was more fulfilling than anything else in his life. The events had tested him, challenged him, and reaffirmed his purpose. Elara approached him quietly, her expression both serious and grateful. "Armand, this was more than saving me," she said softly. "You saved everyone aboard this station, and you proved something else. Strength is not only about power. It is about responsibility and courage." Armand nodded, feeling the weight of her words. The events had changed him. He was no longer just a single father, a survivor of past battles. He had become a protector of lives, a critical player in the security of a powerful organization, and a figure of trust and respect. Despite the victory, Armand knew the enemy was not gone. Outside the station, beyond sensors and patrols, unknown forces could still be moving, planning, and watching. The galaxy was wide and filled with dangers that no one could fully predict. But for now, within the station, peace had returned. Systems were stabilized, personnel accounted for, and the immediate threat eliminated. Armand spent time with Lila, restoring a sense of normalcy. Mira assisted with repairs and monitoring, ensuring that future sabotage attempts would be detected immediately. Elara continued her leadership, now with a renewed understanding of the importance of trust, vigilance, and the human element in her corporation. The events of the past days had forged a bond between Armand and Elara. It was a bond built on trust, respect, and shared experience. They had faced danger together, and their connection deepened with every decision, every action, and every moment of cooperation. Armand knew that more challenges would come, more threats would emerge, and the universe would continue to test them. But he also knew that he had the skills, the courage, and the determination to face them. And he had the people he cared for by his side. As the station settled into a calm rhythm, Armand reflected on the journey. From a single father living a quiet life to a man embroiled in corporate espionage, sabotage, and life-threatening danger, he had proven not only his abilities but his character. The victories, small and large, had reinforced his purpose and his connection to those he protected. And in the quiet moments, when Lila slept peacefully and the station's lights glowed softly, Armand allowed himself a brief sense of satisfaction. The danger had been overcome, the conspiracy revealed, and lives had been saved. The night shadows had passed, and with them, a new chapter in their lives had begun. He knew that the future would hold more challenges, but he was ready, confident, and prepared to face them, not as a lone survivor, but as a protector, a strategist, and a father who would do anything to safeguard those he loved. The station had returned to a semblance of calm, but Armand knew that peace was fragile. After the confrontation with Roland, he had spent hours mapping every system, checking every pathway, and reviewing the logs for any overlooked threats. Nova Corps' orbital station was secure for now, but he understood the galaxy was wide, unpredictable, and full of hidden dangers. Trust had to be earned and vigilance maintained. Lila continued to adapt to her new life in orbit. She loved floating in zero gravity, exploring the station's corridors, and playing with Mira's robots. Her laughter often filled the halls, bringing a sense of warmth and normalcy that Armand treasured. He watched her carefully, ensuring she never ventured into areas that might be dangerous, while also allowing her to experience the wonders of the station. Ilara remained focused on her role as CEO, but she had learned a critical lesson about the importance of personal trust and the human element. Armin's actions had proven that even with advanced technology, instinct, courage, and moral clarity were irreplaceable. She found herself relying on him not just for security, but for advice and insight. His understanding of human behavior, danger, and strategy had saved the station and prevented the theft of Novacor's most valuable technology. Despite their victory, Armand knew the enemy had not been fully revealed. The sabotage and Roland's betrayal were symptoms of a deeper conspiracy. There were still unknown actors, possibly with off-world connections, who wanted Novacor's alien energy technology. Armin spent long hours analyzing data, tracing communications, and identifying anomalies in station systems. He shared his findings with Ilara privately, keeping her informed without alarming the rest of the crew. One evening, while examining the communication logs, Armin discovered a series of encrypted messages sent to a remote relay far beyond the station. The relay appeared to be a mobile ship in a distant orbit, transmitting information about Novacor's operations. The sophistication of the encryption indicated that the enemy had access to high-level technology, perhaps even alien-derived encryption systems. Armin realized that this threat was larger than anything he had previously encountered. Ilara joined him at the console, studying the data. "They are organized," she said quietly. "This is not a small-scale operation. Whoever they are, they have resources, information, and time to plan." "Yes," Armand replied, "and they know how to cover their tracks. We need to anticipate their moves before they act." Together, they devised a plan. They would trace the relay's signal, monitor communications for patterns, and prepare contingencies in case the enemy made a move against the station. Armin emphasized stealth, precision, and control, ensuring that they would not alert their adversaries to the fact that they were aware of the surveillance. Meanwhile, life aboard the station continued. Lila learned quickly, her curiosity and intelligence shining through. She explored labs, learned about alien technology, and asked questions that Armand answered simply, teaching her about the principles of gravity, energy, and engineering. Mira continued to supervise her, making sure the young girl remained safe while still allowing her to learn and grow. One night, the station's alarms sounded unexpectedly. A small ship had approached undetected, attempting to dock with Novacor without authorization. Armand was immediately on alert. He reviewed the docking logs and realized that the ship's approach mirrored the patterns of the encrypted relay. This was not random. The enemy was testing the station's defenses. Armand coordinated with Ilara and the security team. Using the station's defense systems and his own strategies, he intercepted the intruder before it could reach critical areas. The ship was identified as a reconnaissance vessel from a distant faction known to covet alien technology. It had no intention of causing immediate destruction. Its purpose was to gather intelligence and plan future attacks. After securing the intruder, Armand debriefed the station's crew, emphasizing the importance of vigilance and continuous monitoring. He reinforced protocols, updated system defenses, and created redundancies to prevent similar breaches in the future. Ilara supported his measures, understanding that technology alone could not guarantee safety. Human foresight and decisive action were equally important. Despite the continuous threats, Armin began to find moments of peace. Lila's laughter, the calm rotation of the station above Earth, and Ilara's growing trust provided a sense of purpose beyond survival. He realized that he was not just protecting a station or its CEO. He was creating a safe environment for his daughter, nurturing relationships, and reclaiming a sense of belonging he had not felt in years. The final weeks aboard Nova Corps station involved careful monitoring, repairing minor sabotage, and planning for potential threats. Armand's skills, judgment, and courage became invaluable assets. He coordinated with Mira, security personnel, and Alara, forming a team that combined technology, strategy, and human intuition. The station's defenses were now stronger than ever, and Armand's presence ensured that every potential threat would be anticipated. During one quiet evening, Alara approached Armand in the observation deck. Earth glowed below, a serene contrast to the chaos they had faced. "Armand," she said softly, "I owe you more than I can express. Not just for saving my life, but for everything you've done since. You've protected more than me. You've protected hope, knowledge, and the lives aboard this station." Armand shook his head. "I only did what had to be done, and I did it for Lila, too. My daughter's safety is my priority. Everyone else is part of that, naturally." Alara smiled faintly. "You've reminded me that courage isn't about titles or wealth. It's about action, and you have acted more decisively than anyone I've ever known." They stood in silence, watching Earth rotate slowly beneath them. Stars stretched infinitely across the cosmos, each one a reminder of the vastness and unpredictability of the universe. Yet within the station, a sense of security, trust, and cooperation had been established. Armand, Alara, and their allies were prepared for future threats, ready to act decisively to protect the station and its people. Lila, asleep in her quarters, was unaware of the intricate plans, the dangers that had threatened them, and the sacrifices made to ensure her safety. For Armand, that innocence was worth every challenge. Her peaceful sleep was a testament to the success of his vigilance and the trust he had built. The station's systems hummed gently, the lights glowed softly, and the floating robots moved silently along their programmed paths. The universe outside was vast and dangerous, but inside Nova Corps' orbital station, life continued under the watchful protection of a single father, a determined CEO, and a team bound by trust and purpose. Armand knew that challenges would come again, that enemies would continue to seek the alien energy technology, and that vigilance must never falter. But he also knew that he had forged a bond of trust, courage, and respect that would allow them to face whatever came next. The events of the past weeks had transformed him from a man surviving the streets to a protector, a strategist, and a father with a renewed sense of purpose. As the stars shimmered outside and the quiet hum of the station enveloped them, Armand allowed himself a moment of reflection. He had faced fire, betrayal, and danger, and had emerged victorious. He had protected those he loved, thwarted a conspiracy, and ensured the safety of a critical outpost in humanity's reach. The galaxy was wide, the unknown vast, but Armand was ready. He would continue to protect, to act decisively, and to ensure that the people he cared for remained safe. He understood that courage was not the absence of fear, but the determination to act in the face of it. With that thought, he turned from the observation deck, ready to check the station once more to reinforce defenses and to remain vigilant. The story was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, Armand felt a sense of balance and purpose. He was no longer just surviving, he was living, protecting, and preparing for whatever the future held, with his daughter, Alara, and his own determination guiding the way.